Even though I've seen many women share that they're struggling with weight gain, exhaustion, and sleep problems, just as I am, I can't help but feel that it's my fault. That I don't know what I need to know to have a healthier body. But here's the thing, how can I blame myself when even our doctors don't have any answers for the midlife woman? If this sounds like you, then definitely keep listening because I'm chatting with Lara Frendjian, who gives us the details on how our hormones work in an easy to understand way and how, when they're unbalanced, it can lead to things like anxiety, fatigue, and weight gain. We also touch on why midlife women today have a double whammy when it comes to nutrition and hormones. But first, I want to invite you to pop over to my website, therollercoasterpodcast.com, and click on the Start Here tab. Grab your copy of my free audio course, 3 Steps to Go from Hot Mess to Badass and Start Rocking Midlife. This course is designed to empower you to rediscover your identity, unlock your potential, and absolutely thrive during this incredible chapter of your life. How do I know that it works? Well, it is the exact steps that I took myself through when I was the hottest of hot messes. It is why I am now thriving in midlife. As I mentioned, it is entirely free, so there's nothing stopping you. Join now and start your journey towards a more fulfilled and badass you. Now buckle up and let's dive into today's show. This is the Roller Coaster Podcast. We are here to help you be empowered and renew your sense of purpose as a midlife mom. This is your time to redefine and reclaim your power as a woman. Just because our kids are getting older doesn't mean that our lives still don't have crazy twists, turns, ups and downs. And that's not to mention what our hormones are doing. We're navigating helping our kids plan their next chapters while quietly wondering, what the heck does my next chapter look like? My name is Lucy Q, wife, mom, podcaster, and journaling mentor. This is a crazy time in your life, but you are not alone. So I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, ride, ride.
Many of us are struggling with energy levels that seem to be at rock bottom and getting somewhat stressed out, or in my case, pissed off, because the weight is just not budging no matter what we do. I'm the first to admit that our weight doesn't define who we are, but having too much of it, it can cause problems down the road. I'm absolutely thrilled to have with us today Lara Frendjian, a registered holistic nutritionist who's turned countless lives around with her incredible approach to health and nutrition. Lara specializes in helping women over 40 regain their energy, body confidence, and overall health. With her fresh and compelling approach, Lara has earned a reputation as a true authority in women's nutrition. She helps women navigate the choppy waters of hormonal changes that come in their 40s and that can cause energy depletion, anxiety, weight gain, and metabolism changes. Welcome, Lara.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, Lucy.
So, before we hit record, we were chatting a bit about our overall health and wellness and how still in midlife we're getting these mixed messages of when it comes to what we're supposed to be like. Could we maybe start off by, if you could share your personal journey from fatigue to energy and how it has inspired your unique framework?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, this nutrition is actually my second career. So I was in the corporate world. I started off as a CPA. And about, 15 years ago, I really felt a calling to, get into nutrition. So I did. I was still working part-time as an accountant, and I, moved into nutrition, and I was doing really well. So I was, in my 30s. I felt great. I was, fit, etc. And then I started to approach my 40s, and everything that I was doing no longer worked. I started to gain weight. I was doing the exact same thing. This is the thing that really gets me is I was doing the same thing that I was doing before. I've always been a healthy eater. I love nutrition. I was exercising, moving my body, but the things that I was doing were no longer working, and I was gaining weight in my midsection. I felt tired all the time. More than the tired, I was a different person. Like my personality was changing. I was agitated. I became really short-tempered. Um, if someone brought something to me that I had to do, like if my timelines changed, it was so overwhelming. It would kind of rock my world. Just hyper reactive to things. My body started to become inflamed. I was bloated all the time. I was developing eczema, and I thought, what in the world is happening to my body? I'm a nutritionist. I'm helping women. I'm helping them feel good and lose weight, etc. But my own body seems to be fighting against me. So that's really where my journey started. So I was already a nutritionist at that time, but what I was doing wasn't working. So I went to my doctor. I talked to her about it. I have a really good doctor, and she ran blood work, etc. My thyroid, little bit underactive, but nothing that would require medication. And she basically said, think it's just perimenopause. And I thought, like, I'm in my early 40s. What are you talking about? Menopause is like 55. This is in my head. I wasn't even near menopause. And the word perimenopause was just, yeah. So, I mean, she offered me the birth control pill, which I knew was not the solution because I'd taken it early on and it made me crazy. So I knew that was not the right solution. And it's, synthetic hormones that will regulate your cycle, but nothing else regulates. It's basically just simulating a cycle. So I knew that wasn't the right solution. And she said, well, maybe go see a naturopathic doctor or, a doctor that could prescribe you bioidentical hormones. So I thought I was going to go down the bioidentical hormone route. And then that still didn't feel right in my gut. And I started to research and I started to research and research and read and just try to understand what was happening. And then everything changed, and I started to integrate some changes, which I'll talk about, on this chat. And everything changed, and my body started to balance again, and I started to feel like myself again. It took about 6 months, and I started to just everything started to reverse, and I knew I was onto something, and I knew that I had to start, focusing on this because it feels really hopeless when you're in it and you feel like you're doing all the right things and your body is just not responding and it's getting worse and you're feeling, yeah, like I really felt like I was losing myself, and don't want women to feel that way. We don't have to.
So were you still sort of 40-ish when you sort of went through this transformation?
Yeah, I was early 40s.
So you were,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and I guess that's the difference that I'm seeing with a lot of women is that now that I didn't even learn the word perimenopause until maybe the last couple of years. I just turned 50. So I can look back and I can see in fact, a lot of these changes I started going through in my late 30s. And I was told, I was dismissed by doctors. I didn't have a doctor like you. So, you're very lucky to have a doctor that at least used the perimenopause word.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm the example of what happens when, you get 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road and your hormones have been out of whack. And I did actually end up taking HRT. Just because, I mean, I had insomnia for better part of 4 years, and it just got to the point where I'm like, I can't do that. And my hormones were still not balanced. So then they've now had me on tryptophan, try and help me to sleep through the night. It's still, but I'm like, my body's still not working. They also made the mistake of not putting me on progesterone when they started HRT. So yeah. So let's just say that that's to be determined what's the damage was done from that, let's say. So I'm kind of like the polar opposite of what you went through. And like you, I want women in their even their 30s to understand this stuff, because if you know about it that earlier on, then you can get way ahead of this, because you don't want to get to 50 and have your hormones be in such a mess that doctors are just saying, I don't know, because they don't. And from what I've been told, doctors receive little to no education on female hormone health, which
Yeah.
is terrifying.
It is terrifying. It's horrific. I mean, look at our population, at least 50% of the world is going to go through this, and there's no solution. Even my doctor herself, she couldn't prescribe me HRT. She couldn't help me really outside of the birth control pill. I had to, if I wanted to go the HRT route, I had to pay out of pocket. And it was yeah, it was a very expensive route.
See,
And
and that's the difference though, because you mentioned oh, bio
bioidentical hormones.
bioidentical. So that's when they mix the compound specific to you.
Right.
But then the hormone, the HRT, is just a generic patch that you can get.
Right.
That they
Okay.
start you that you start on a low dose, and then they
Yeah.
kind of bump you up, sort of similar to when you're on thyroid medication. They start you at a low dose, and they're like, let's see what happens, and then let's see what happens. It's still a
Right.
guessing. It's a complete guessing game.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Uh,
it's crazy. So let's go back to, you figured out some things that helped you start feeling better.
yeah. Yeah.
So what did you do?
So the first thing that I did is I studied our hormones. I started to understand what was happening in my body and why my body was reacting. Like there's, when I work with clients, I get them to do a stress timeline, and I try to get them to think back to when the things, whatever appeared, okay, whatever symptom, whatever disease appeared, what was happening in their life during that time or 6 months prior to that time. So for me, I had taken this big trip to Cambodia. It was extremely stressful on my body. I thought I came back with a parasite because I was so bloated, but it wasn't. It was really the stress of that trip and all the stuff that happened on that trip really wreaked havoc on my body, and it just sped up the process. So the first thing that I did was learned about hormones and how they function. So maybe we can go into that, like in
Please
terms of
do,
what.
because I've tried to read up on it, and
Yeah,
it's, I mean, you basically need a PhD to figure some of this stuff out. So if you could boil it down and make it a lot easier to understand, let's
yeah.
go for it.
It's pretty simple if you just, if you kind of narrow it down. So I have a video on Instagram explaining this in a very simple form. So think about three buckets. Okay. So you have three buckets. You have your adrenals. So the hormones that your adrenals produce, cortisol, adrenaline, etc. But let's focus on cortisol. And then we have your fat. Your fat cells actually produce hormones. And then you have your ovaries that produce hormones, and you have progesterone and estrogen and testosterone. Okay. So you have three buckets. And what happens in the third bucket, so your hormones, your progesterone and estrogen, it starts at actually as early as 35. So the fact that you started to feel it earlier is extremely, extremely normal. And if I were to think back, it probably started earlier for me. It just wasn't as painful. So I didn't really notice. So the first thing that happens is progesterone starts to decline. So we are not ovulating as much as we did before. So progesterone is your pro gestational hormone. So it helps you get pregnant essentially and keep a pregnancy. So progesterone really drops. Think of progesterone as like your zen hormone. It like helps you sleep, it helps your muscles relax, your brain is calm. It's your zen hormone. So that declines. Of course, anxiety increases, sleep deprivation starts to kick in. You're just feeling edgy all the time, and a lot of other things, a lot of other symptoms are related to the progesterone dropping. Weight gain is one of them. So progesterone drops. Progesterone and estrogen are like a seesaw. So when progesterone drops, usually what happens is estrogen increases. So these are like my PCOS, kind of clients, women who have really short cycles. They're not bleeding as much. So estrogen rises, and it's not pretty. So estrogen is like your vivacious hormone. Okay, so think about it as 13. You're going through puberty, lots of feelings, lots of emotions, water retention, weight gain. This is estrogen. Histamine reactions. We'll talk, if we have time, a little bit about that. That's where my eczema was really coming from. So estrogen initially increases, and then over time it starts to like go up and down. So it becomes really erratic until you finally lose your cycle and you go into full menopause, and then eventually it just declines. So this is happening. Okay, in order to stabilize your body, we still need these hormones. We need these hormones more than just for a cycle. Like, men have progesterone. We all need these hormones in order to just function in life. So what happens is your adrenals take over and your fat cells take over. And that's why your body becomes more prone to holding on to fat, because these fat cells are actually producing hormones. So in order to lose the weight, that's why the things that I was doing before were no longer effective, is because my body was different. So your fat cells start to produce hormones, and your adrenals take over for the ovaries and they start to produce hormones. And this is why I do the stress timeline, because if my adrenals are also tapped out, well, guess what? I'm going to continue to gain more and more weight, because my body's like, oh my gosh, she still needs these hormones to function. So let's hold on to the fat cells, guys, just hunker down. And of course, it causes issues with all your other hormones. Like, we have so many other hormones, like digestive hormones and insulin, and lots of other things that are happening in the body, and they all hinge on what happens to these other reproductive hormones.
Ride.
I remember one of the darkest days of my life, the day I hit rock bottom. When I went searching for answers on how to get myself out of that dark place, I discovered journaling. But when I tried to put pen to paper, I didn't know where to start. I had no guide or method to help me express what I was feeling. The only thing that I had was the blank page of my journal staring back at me. It took me years to figure out the proper journaling method so that I could understand who I was, what I wanted, how I thought, and how I felt. That is why I've taken everything that I've learned and turned it into a guide that will not only help you start your journaling journey, but will also help you start each day with purpose and gratitude. This guide is filled with growth tools, personal resources, and guided journal entries that will help you understand who you are, what you want, what you're thinking, and what you're feeling. You can find your journaling journey, your guide to starting each day with purpose and gratitude, on Amazon, and check out the show notes for links. Order your journaling journey today and discover your true self.
Ride.
Does that help clarify things a little bit?
Well, first of all, I had absolutely no idea that fat produced hormones. Absolutely none. That was I'm pretty sure that's the first time I heard it. I knew about the adrenals and something like how adrenal fatigue can compound everything. So when your body is in the position where, and we'll use me as an example, where evidently, fat cells have taken over producing hormones and probably adrenal. And even though I've been placed on hormones, it's still like nothing's still working. Like, my body just seems to be working against each other. So how do you begin to flip that switch so that your body's not depending on fat to produce hormones, and it's not depending on the adrenals to produce hormones. Can we, or like, how do you change that?
Yeah. So this is where we miss the mark. Okay. So no one really talks about this, that yeah, hormones are really important, but hormones are not produced out of thin air. They're produced by something. And that something is actually nutrients. So, everybody focuses on macros and counting macros, whatever. Okay. And some of that is important. We need to get enough protein, we need enough fat, we need enough carbohydrates in our diet. But if we're just focusing on macros and missing the mark on minerals, vitamins, essential vitamins, you cannot produce the right hormones. So, where I started is at the root. So, instead of taking the HRT, or I started to investigate it, but I just parked it because I'm like, what's causing this, right? Like, yes, stress is causing it. So stress management is extremely important. And I'm vigilant about that part of my life, because when I don't do that, things do go haywire still, even still. Um, because we're at this point in our lives, we're losing nutrients, where our body is utilizing nutrients at a much faster rate than it did in our 20s and 30s, early 30s, and our teens. We're just using up more nutrients.
And if I could just interject here, women today are also facing a different problem when it comes to nutrients, because our food is less nutritious than it ever has been.
Yeah, it's so
So
true.
it almost feels like we've got a double whammy. And maybe that's why so many women right now are having these hormonal problems. Like, first of all, we have to look at that really, when we look at current history, we're only the third generation of women to be going through menopause because of the average age life, right? So there's little to no research on that. So for me, my grandmother would be sort of that first generation of women that live past 50 or 60. And then you look at how food was then. Our food was more nutritionally dense. I think today, something about a carrot from 50 years ago equals, 10 carrots today. So we've got a double whammy. It's almost like, hit me again. It feels so good when you stop. Like,
It's true. It's absolutely true. So we have to be very aware of our food choices. So have a nutrient-rich diet, but supplementation is almost, essential. It's really hard to get all your nutrients through food, but this is where I was going wrong. I was generically, supplementing. So I was doing the stuff that everyone talked about, especially, I'm not going to mention it, like the vitamin D, but high dose vitamin C, zinc, magnesium still kept. It was the only thing that I kept. Fish oil. So all the things that we're told are really good for us. And, if I talk to most of the clients that come to see me are taking these or similar supplements, they're actually throwing off other things in your body. They're countering.
oh
Yeah.
Lord. I'm going over my list. I'm like, I take vitamin D, I take vitamin C, I take magnesium, I take calcium, did I say omega-3s? Um, yeah, that's all what
Yeah.
I take. And
Yeah.
zinc, I take zinc.
Yeah. So you have to know what your body needs before you supplement, because everyone's body is different. There are certain things, like we are all magnesium deficient, so I can say with confidence that we all need more magnesium glycinate, malate, and taurate are the three that I work with and recommend because they are very well absorbed. Citrates I stay away from because they cause other mineral loss, like copper loss. We won't have time to go into like that, level of detail, but magnesium I could confidently say that we can all take. The only thing that I would caution is if someone takes magnesium and they feel worse, that means their other minerals are off balance and they can't absorb that magnesium. So it's causing more stress on their body. So if you take it and you feel more tired or awake or whatever your symptoms are, then you got to park it, and there's other underlying issues. But I'd say for the vast majority, we can tolerate magnesium.
So what should be some of those minerals and vitamins that we could be looking at?
Okay, so what we could be looking at are definitely magnesium, all your electrolytes, potassium, sodium, whole food vitamin C, copper, um, taurine, so, an essential amino acid, B3, B6. So yeah, those would be the ones. Oh, cod liver oil. So it's not an omega. There's some omega-3, 6 in there, but we're looking at the retinol content of cod liver oil. Yeah.
I was gonna say cod liver oil.
Yeah.
Well, I even take the omegas that have like, because I'm vegetarian, that have no sort of fishy aftertaste, because
Right.
it's like there's nothing worse than, oh.
Yeah.
So can you get cod liver oil in capsules these days?
You absolutely can. Yeah.
Okay, I don't think I could stomach swallowing a spoonful of that.
Yeah, so I do. Most of my clients opt for capsule forms, and that's fine. So does my family. But yeah, you do. But so what I start with is running a hair tissue test to understand what's going on in the body, what you're really deficient in, and also running some blood work through your doctor to see where's your iron at. I never supplement with iron.
Oh, that's
Um,
one I do take too, because I'm vegetarian.
okay. Yeah.
Oh
So
no,
you
you're giving me that look. I'm like, oh my God.
So you just have to be careful with iron supplementation because it could cause more harm to the body, especially if you don't need it. And what form of iron are you taking, etc. So iron is not an iron deficiency issue; it's an iron metabolism issue. Why is your body not metabolizing it properly? Because iron is really rich in our diet. I don't care if you're vegetarian or vegan. If you're, yeah, it's the most prominent mineral in our soil. So we definitely have enough iron. It's like the question is, what's the root of the issue, right? With my hormones, I was like, what's the root? Why am I not producing the right hormones? I figured that out. It's because I was missing particular nutrients. So I started to integrate those into my diet. And iron is the same question. Why am I not metabolizing iron properly? You fix that, and iron functions properly. Okay. Um, so yeah, I run blood work through my doctor. So and then I ran a hair tissue test through a lab in the States, and I got a good picture of what was happening in my body, and I started to rebalance things. That's the first place I start with clients. We do other things too, like okay, so easy things. Even if you don't have access to these things, you eat 3 meals a day. So a lot of women are like fasting. They're having a coffee in the morning. They're skipping breakfast, thinking, they're in the fasting bucket. So, okay, so I said fat cells produce hormones, and adrenals, secrete hormones. Now, if you are fasting, if you're skipping meals, if you're starting your day with a coffee, your adrenals are going to tap out and they're not going to do the job that they're supposed to do in order to produce the right hormones. So, what we need to do is really keep the body stable and reduce the stress load on our body. So, you can do very simple things. So, eat 3 balanced meals. And when I say balanced, they're protein forward. Okay, so protein rich, I'd say 30 to 35 grams, depending. I mean, I calculate macros for our clients. So depending on your size, etc. But aim for at least 25 of your calories should be coming from protein. And what I like to do is, have 3 square meals and fast in between meals. So we do get the benefit of fasting, but it's in between balanced meals so that meal that you ate at breakfast is going to keep you satiated until lunchtime. And then lunch to dinner, sometimes we need a little snack in between, and that's fine. So if it's too long a gap, you have a little snack, again, balance, and then you have a really, you know, balanced dinner. And then that will keep you until the morning. So we can do some fasting and benefit from it. Postmenopausal women do really well with fasting because they're not having these issues that we're having in this perimenopause state. But perimenopausal women are extremely sensitive to stress, and nutrient deficiencies will stress you out. Imbalanced meals, not enough protein. So most of what I see is really carbohydrate rich. So even if someone tells me they're eating low carb, when we look at what they're eating, it's carb dominant,
Okay.
low protein, low fat. So we need to kind of switch that up. We need to go with protein, fat, and some carbohydrates. Okay, so I never ever cut carbohydrates out. We need it for thyroid function, etc. But we do need to balance the meals and balance the macros in the meals.
Yeah, I was never a fan of this concept of fasting. It never made sense to me because I'm like, well, if I eat my last meal of the day at 6 o'clock and I eat breakfast at 9 o'clock, well, isn't that fasting? Like, why do I have to do that more? And plus, I wake up, I'm hungry. I want to eat breakfast. I don't
Yeah,
want to
that's
wait.
actually a good sign. That's a good sign, the fact that you're hungry in the
And
morning.
and the other thing that I do is I'm hungry for my breakfast. Lunch, I tend to eat lighter. I tend to stick with vegetables. I just love a plate of raw vegetables and some nuts. Love that
Okay.
for lunch. And then dinner, I eat a bigger dinner because that's when I'm hungrier. And I try and do what my body wants, you know. But obviously from our conversation, we probably have to have another conversation because there's more than a few things that are wonky for me. And again, I've tried to get my doctors to run tests and without, because they don't know the nutrients and vitamins and minerals, they can look at it and say, yeah, that's within normal range. But
That's
what,
it.
yeah, which what a lot of people don't realize that the normal range is based on, if I understand it correctly, the average of blood tests.
Yeah.
And it's
In
like,
that,
well,
in that particular lab, usually in that
yeah, and
particular.
it's like, wait a second, you look around and obesity is an all-time high. So if you're comparing me against everybody else that is classified as obese and I'm normal, well, how does that even begin to make sense? And also a lot of tests are also based on healthy young males.
Yeah.
They don't even consider, and basically because women's hormones are too complicated to figure out, so we're just going to look at healthy young males and base everything on that.
It's true. It's true. And that's where, generic diets, they're for healthy young males.
Mhm.
Let alone, perimenopausal, postmenopausal, like we're not even on the radar.
No,
Um,
no, we're not. And I mean, let's face it, when we were in our 20s, you could throw back a couple of chocolate bars, a bag of Doritos, and a can of Coke, and it never made a difference. I
it's
mean,
true.
I ate more in my early 20s and weighed less than now.
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
thought
You know,
about certain things.
on that point, we do have to eat more. This is what I do with
Yeah.
most of my clients. We are under eating. So we're under eating calories, of course, macros and micros, yes, but we're not eating enough. And this is where our slowing metabolism does come in. It's like kind of like a car. If you don't, if your car is low on fuel, what do you naturally do to conserve gas? You take your foot off the gas pedal and try to get
Yeah.
to the gas station. That's really what's happening in our body. So just watch the low calories, like log it in Fitness Pal and see how much you're actually eating. And if it's under, for the average person, if it's under 1600 calories, you are well below where you should be at. Yeah.
And it also goes
So
back to, you can eat a 1600 calorie burger, and that's going to give you something very different than if you eat those nutrient rich 1600 calories. That's just the way it is. Um,
absolutely.
it's, you know, we've definitely covered a lot today. You've packed a lot in. But before we wrap up, can you give our listeners just one key piece of advice from this episode to help them start to make that change for themselves?
Sure. Um, I would say one thing that you could start doing is first recognize that, I interchange the word midlife with the word high life. Really, I believe this could be the best years of our lives. We're wiser, we don't take as much crap, we know who we are, right? So recognize that even you, okay, Lucy, you've taken these hormones, etc. Our body is never beyond repair. So if we give it the right things, the right tools, it could definitely reverse. And I believe these could be the best high life years of our lives. So I think that's one. And two, really pay attention to your body. Do that stress timeline. I think that's a great place to start to see where is my life at. What's been going on, and once you have that picture, you could start to implement some of the things that we talked about. The 3 square meals, get more nutrient dense food into your diet, rest more. So it's yeah, but I think the mind is a really powerful tool that we could tap into if we just truly recognize that there could be a shift and that we can make a change and we can improve things for the better. The body responds.
And sometimes it's just the simplest things that we're ignoring.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it doesn't have to be complicated. We can just go with those simple mindfulness things that you've been talking about.
Sure.
So for everyone listening, I really hope that you found as much value in Lara's insights as I have today. So I want you to make sure that you connect with Lara. So check out the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And I'd like to thank you, our listeners today, and a big thank you to Lara. And stay tuned for more inspiring stories, expert advice, and support to help you navigate your own midlife journey. Until next time, make sure you're not taking this ride alone. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby.